Hello there everybody, this is Mrs. W with part 2 on Who Was Walt Disney. When we left off the last time, Walt Disney was ready to strike out on his own. So as we continue, he heads to Kansas City where he teamed up with another artist. He had a very unusual name, Wipprecht. Was shy and serious, not at all like Walt. Was also very talented. The two started their own company. They hoped to create art for ads and signs. They had plenty of ideas. They were missing only one thing, customers. The shop closed after only a month. Soon after, Walt and found jobs at the Kansas City Slide Company. It turned out to be a lucky break. The Slide Company changed Walt's life. He learned all about animation. Animation is a film of drawings that move. Cartoons. In 1920, cartoons were something new. Audiences were amazed to watch drawings of funny people and animals actually moving on the screen. Artists competed with each other to invent new techniques for cartoons. Walt wanted to get in on the action, so he went to the library and took out a book called Animated Cartoons, How They Are Made, Their Origin and Development by Edwin G. Lutz. He studied the book, then he set up a studio in the shed behind his house. Every evening he drew cartoon characters in different positions and filmed them. It might take 18 drawings just to show a person raising an arm. Animation takes a lot of time, but hard work never stopped Walt. He called his cartoons laughograms. They were silent, full of slapstick humor, and only lasted a couple of minutes. Some were based on fairy tales, but Walt would change the story a little to make it funnier. After selling a laughogram cartoon to the Newman Theaters in Kansas City, he started up a small company to make more. Walt recruited artists to help him make cartoons. After all, he couldn't do all the drawing himself. The problem was he couldn't afford to pay a steady salary. Instead, he promised to share any money earned from the cartoons. His friend Iwerks and a few other young men joined Walt in his new business. They spent the day drawing characters, making up jokes, and goofing around with the movie camera. Walt worked on one film called Alice's Wonderland. It was about a real little girl named Alice, played by a 4-year-old actress named Virginia Davis. Walt's Alice finds herself in a cartoon world. Mixing live actors with animation was something new. But before he finished Alice's Wonderland, Walt's company went bankrupt. He even had to sell his movie camera. Kansas City was not the center of the entertainment business. Walt knew that. If he wanted to make it big, he had better go where movies were made, Hollywood. After World War I, Hollywood became home to film studios such as Universal, Paramount, Warner Brothers, and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, or MGM. Movies were now a big business. In August 1923, Walt packed a cardboard suitcase with his clothes and drawing materials. He bought a train ticket to California, where his older brother Roy was already living. Walt moved in with an uncle, paying a few dollars a month for room and board. Walt had big dreams for himself, but he certainly didn't look like much of a success. He was stick-thin and wore shabby clothing. He spiffed himself up as best he could and went to every movie studio in town. Nobody offered him a job, so he went back to his old idea of making and selling cartoons. In October, he finally got a break. A woman named Margaret Winkler saw and liked what Walt had done in Alice's Wonderland. She agreed to pay Walt for a series of Alice cartoons, which she would sell to theaters. This was terrific news except for one thing. Walt had only 3 months to make a new film. His young actress Virginia Davis still lived in Kansas City. Also, Walt needed money to make the movie. He didn't even have a movie camera, much less a studio or artist to work with him. Walt turned to his brother Roy for help. Roy was 8 years older than Walt. Unlike Walt, Roy was practical. He had a good head for business, so the two formed the Disney Brothers Studio. With a loan from their uncle and some money from their parents, Walt and Roy set up shop in a small office on Kingswell Avenue. Walt bought himself a movie camera, and he persuaded Virginia Davis and her family to move to Hollywood. At first, Walt did all the creative work in the studio. He thought up the story for each of the Alice movies. He directed his child star. He drew all the cartoon characters and put the live action and animation together. He worked so hard that his first film was finished ahead of schedule. But making the whole series of Alice films was too much work for one man. So Walt hired 3 men to operate the cameras and help with the animation. He also hired 3 women to ink and paint the black and white cartoon drawings. One of the young women was small and pretty with dark hair. She was named Lillian Bounds. Walt also worried that his own drawings were not good enough. He wanted his cartoon films to be the best in the business, so he got in touch with Ub Iwerks. Walt convinced Ub to move out to California and join the Disney studio. Ub was talented and fast. He could produce great drawings in no time. Over the years, Ub did more and more of the drawing, while Walt focused on thinking up the stories and directing. Together, they created a new character named Oswald the Lucky Rabbit and started making a series of Oswald cartoons. It was a smart decision. Oswald was a hit. The studio began selling cartoons on a regular basis. Business was so good, in fact, that Walt and Roy moved into bigger offices on Hyperion Avenue. And Walt changed the name of the company. Instead of Disney Brothers Studio, he wanted to call it Walt Disney Studios. Did Roy mind? It seems that he didn't. All Roy said was, if that's the way you want it, it was okay with him. After all, Walt was the one making the cartoons. Walt was under a lot of pressure now. He had to make lots of Oswald cartoons and do it quickly. He became short-tempered and irritable. He took his worries out on his employees. Some quit because they couldn't stand his insulting remarks. Walt could make you feel real bad when he wanted to, one of them said. Then something really nasty happened. Something Walt never expected and didn't deserve. A man named Charlie Mintz, whose company was buying Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons, hired away most of Walt's artists. Mintz decided that he didn't need Walt anymore. With Walt's own artists, he could make and sell Oswald cartoons without Walt Disney Studios. What Charlie Mintz did wasn't actually against the law, but it was still wrong. Walt was so upset that he couldn't eat or sleep. Not only had he lost Oswald, but he had been double-crossed. The only way he could save his business was to create another cartoon character, an even better one than Oswald. Walt worked like mad on a new idea and kept it secret. Only a few people, Ub, who did the drawing, Roy, who was always loyal to his brother, and Lillian, who inked the drawings, knew about the new character. The new character was going to be a mouse. Lillian Bounds was from Idaho. She moved to Hollywood in 1923. She was 26 years old. Her boss, Walt, liked her spunky nature. Her short, bobbed hair bounced when she laughed. Often Walt would give Lillian a ride home after work. He was very proud of the new car he'd bought, a Ford Roadster. The two got to know each other on those rides. Finally, Walt asked Lillian out on a date. He even said he'd buy himself a new suit for the occasion. Lillian agreed, and Walt went shopping. Confident as he often seemed, he was shy around girls. In fact, he was 22 and still hadn't had a serious girlfriend. Walt showed up at Lillian's door dressed in a gray-green double-breasted suit, holding theater tickets. Lillian was charmed, and off they went. On July 13, 1925, Walt and Lillian were married. They spent their honeymoon at Mount Rainier, and on their wedding night, Walt had such a bad toothache he couldn't sleep. To take his mind off the pain, he left their room and helped the porter shine shoes all night. The next morning, he went to a dentist and had his tooth pulled. It certainly wasn't the most fun way to start off a marriage, but Walt had a good story to tell. Lillian quit her job at the studio, but staying home was lonely. Walt spent such long hours at work. In later years, sometimes after dinner, Lillian would go back to the studio with Walt and go to sleep on a sofa while he kept on working. For Christmas, Walt decided to find company for Lillian. He wrapped a big hat box with a ribbon and presented it to her on Christmas morning. Expecting a hat, Lillian opened the box and out popped a furry orange puppy. She named it Suni. Soon, Suni went everywhere with her. As for Walt, he was just as crazy about Suni as Lillian was. Every night, Walt would tell Lillian how his new character was coming along. One story is that the mouse was first named Mortimer. But Lillian didn't like the name. Mortimer sounded too fancy. Instead, she suggested Mickey. No one can be sure if the story is exactly true. Walt often stretched the truth to make a story more interesting. But one way or another, the new cartoon character got the name Mickey Mouse. He was skinny with stick legs, a long tail, and a sharp face. He didn't look that much like the Mickey Mouse everyone knows today. He also wasn't as nice. Early cartoons starring Mickey Mouse often showed him playing mean tricks on other characters. As Mickey became everybody's hero, Disney saw he needed another character that was naughty, greedy, and rude in a funny way. That character was Donald Duck. Like most movies and cartoons at that time, the first Mickey Mouse cartoon, called Plain Crazy, was silent and in black and white. In Plain Crazy, Mickey was a daredevil pilot who tries to impress his girlfriend Minnie. The cartoon character came out not long after Charles Lindbergh became the first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. Mickey Mouse was so hugely popular today that it is hard to believe that Walt had no luck selling his first two Mickey cartoons. But it's true. No theater wanted to show Walt's Mouse cartoons. Never one to give up, Walt asked himself what would make Mickey more exciting. His answer was sound. The first movie with sound came out in 1927. It was called The Jazz Singer and starred a popular actor named Al Jolson. But as of yet, there had never been a cartoon with sound. If Walt wanted to do that, it would certainly grab the attention of the audiences. In Steamboat Willie, Mickey Mouse whistles, and his girlfriend Minnie says, "Yoo-hoo." There was also music and other sound effects like doors slamming. Steamboat Willie was by far the best sound cartoon of its time. The manager of the Colony Theater in New York City agreed to show it, and audiences loved it. Soon other theaters started showing it. Walt quickly added soundtracks to his two early Mickey cartoons and was now able to sell them to theaters as well. For later cartoons, Walt recorded himself doing the voices of both Mickey and Minnie. Now something really surprising happened. A manager of a theater in Ocean Park, California came up with a great gimmick. He invited kids to come to his theater and watch hours and hours of Mickey Mouse cartoons. All the kids who showed up became members of a club called the Mickey Mouse Club. There were pie eating contests, marble tournaments for club members. Walt also visited the theater one afternoon and watched 1,000 Mickey Mouse Club members screaming for their cartoon hero. Walt decided to start more clubs in other cities. Mickey Mouse clubs started to spring up all over America. At their meetings, kids recited the Mickey Mouse Club pledge. Mickey Mice do not swear, smoke, cheat, or lie. There was also a special club song. The Mickey Mouse clubs made Mickey Mouse cartoons even more popular, and the cartoons made even more kids want to join a Mickey Mouse club. Soon a Mickey Mouse cartoon strip, drawn by Ub Iwerks, was appearing in 40 newspapers around the country. Kids went crazy buying Mickey Mouse dolls, buttons, pencils, toothbrushes, and books. Walt had done something new, something big, just as he always hoped he would. And it was just the beginning. We're going to stop there for today, and we'll have part 3 next. See you later.